The date is February 24, 1942. It has been less than 3 months since the devastating surprise attack on Pearl Harbor, and the American Pacific coast is consumed by an atmosphere of absolute paranoia. The American Pacific Fleet is still paralyzed, and rumors of an imminent, full-scale Japanese invasion of California are treated not as fiction, but as tactical inevitability. Cities up and down the western seaboard are under strict blackout conditions. Anti-aircraft batteries are nervously scanning empty skies. Off the coast of Santa Barbara, California, the pitch-black, freezing waters of the Pacific begin to froth and churn. A massive 356-foot shadow breaks the surface, seawater cascading off its dark steel casing. It is the Imperial Japanese Navy submarine, I-17. Its mission tonight is not tactical, but purely psychological decapitation. It is here to shell the Bankline oil refinery at Ellwood, an undefended civilian infrastructure target, to prove to the American public that their mainland is completely defenseless and that the oceans will not protect them. But tonight, the skies over California are not empty. Cruising at 40,000 feet, far beyond the visual, auditory, and technological reach of the mid-20th century, is a single Northrop Grumman B-2 Spirit. In this simulation, the ultimate terror weapon of the Imperial Japanese Navy is about to be intercepted by a $2 billion strategic stealth bomber from the 21st century. The resulting engagement will not be a battle. It will be a mathematical execution. To understand the sheer kinetic and technological disparity of this engagement, we must first establish the capability of the historical threat. The I-17 was not a primitive or improvised vessel. It was a Type B-1 cruiser submarine, representing the absolute pinnacle of Imperial Japanese naval engineering. Displacing nearly 2,600 tons when submerged, it was a highly capable warship designed specifically for deep ocean, long-endurance patrols far from any supply lines. It even featured a watertight forward hangar capable of launching a Yokosuka E-14Y float plane for reconnaissance. Under the command of Commander Kozo Nishino, the I-17 was a blunt instrument of terror. Its primary surface armament was a 140mm 11th-year type naval gun mounted aft of the conning tower. It was capable of firing a 38-pound high-explosive shell at a muzzle velocity of 2,800 feet per second with a maximum effective range of roughly 11 miles. Against an undefended coastal oil refinery, this weapon was devastating. However, deploying this weapon required the submarine to operate under severe physical and tactical constraints. To fire, the I-17 had to surface, vent its ballast tanks, and come to a near-complete halt. Heavy steel pressure hatches had to be manually unsealed. A gun crew of Japanese sailors then had to physically spill out onto a wet, freezing, completely exposed wooden deck in the dead of night. They relied entirely on analog technology, brass binoculars, starlight, and the naked eye to acquire their targets. Shells had to be hoisted by muscle and chain up from the magazines. It was analog warfare at its peak, requiring immense physical labor and leaving the submarine highly vulnerable. Directly above them, operating in the icy thin air of the stratosphere, is an apex predator of the modern age. The B-2 Spirit is a multi-role strategic stealth bomber originally designed to penetrate the densest, most technologically advanced Soviet anti-aircraft networks on Earth, deliver nuclear payloads, and return undetected. Against the 1942 Imperial Japanese Navy, its multi-billion-dollar stealth capabilities are entirely redundant. The B-2 utilizes a continuous curvature flying wing design and specialized radar-absorbent material coatings, giving a heavy bomber with a 172-foot wingspan the radar cross-section of a large insect. But in 1942, there are no radar waves searching for it. Early American shore-based warning radars are crude, easily spoofed, and not pointed at the sky directly overhead. The Japanese submarine below has no radar whatsoever. Inside the pressurized, climate-controlled, sterile environment of the B-2 cockpit, the reality of warfare is vastly different from the freezing deck of the I-17. There is no physical exertion required to arm a weapon. Two pilots sit in zero-gravity-style ejection seats, monitoring an array of glowing digital multifunction displays. The B-2 is equipped with the AN/APQ-181 synthetic aperture radar. From 8 miles above the Earth, this phased array system pushes microwave energy through the thick California marine layer, mapping the ocean surface in photographic, sub-meter detail. To the B-2 sensors, the Pacific Ocean is a brightly lit, perfectly defined grid. Within the belly of the bomber, the payload bay contains a rotary launcher loaded with 16 GBU-31 Joint Direct Attack munitions. The JDAM is not a weapon of the Second World War. It is a 2,000-pound precision-guided smart bomb. The core of the weapon is a standard Mk-84 unguided iron bomb, packed with 945 pounds of tritonol, a highly stable, incredibly violent mixture of TNT and aluminum powder. Bolted to this iron core is the JDAM tail kit. In modern warfare, this tail kit uses GPS satellites to guide the weapon to a coordinate with pinpoint accuracy. In 1942, the GPS satellite constellation does not exist. However, the B-2 does not need it. The JDAM is also equipped with a state-of-the-art inertial navigation system, utilizing complex ring laser gyroscopes to calculate its exact velocity, pitch, yaw, and position in three-dimensional space. Once the B-2's onboard targeting computers feed the exact coordinates of the submarine into the weapon's brain, the bomb can steer itself to the target autonomously, manipulating its aerodynamic tail fins to correct its glide path entirely without GPS. It is 1910 hours. The I-17 comes to a halt in the surf zone off the Ellwood coast. The heavy steel hatches crank open, groaning against the salt air. Commander Nishino's gunners scramble onto the slick deck. The cold wind bites through their uniform jackets. Their boots clank against the metal framing as they manually turn the heavy gears to traverse the massive 140mm gun toward the dark silhouette of the California shoreline. They are shouting orders to one another over the sound of the crashing waves, entirely focused on the horizon. At 40,000 feet, the B-2's sensor suite registers the massive thermal anomaly of the submarine's diesel engines venting raw heat into the cold Pacific air. On the bomber's digital displays, the I-17 is glowing white-hot against the black backdrop of the freezing ocean. The targeting software instantly calculates the geometry of the intercept. It accounts for wind shear, altitude, barometric pressure, and the rotation of the Earth. The target is locked. The bomber does not need to alter its course, enter a steep dive, or expose itself to anti-aircraft fire. It simply maintains its smooth, silent, perfectly level flight path. A pilot wearing a pressurized flight suit calmly depresses a button on the control stick. The B-2's bomb bay doors snap open, exposing the rotary launcher to the freezing stratospheric air. A single 2,000-pound GBU-31 is released from the rack, dropping into the violent slipstream. The JDAM falls for approximately 50 seconds. Down below, the Japanese gunners have just chambered their first high-explosive shell. They are making their final micro-adjustments to the analog sights, aiming for the massive oil storage tanks looming on the beach. They hear absolutely nothing. The B-2's 4 General Electric turbofan engines are entirely inaudible from 40,000 feet. Furthermore, the falling bomb is traveling so fast during its terminal descent that it breaks the sound barrier, meaning it physically outruns its own acoustic signature. There is no whistling sound. There is no warning. Impact. On land, a blast wave dissipates into the open air, but underwater, surrounded by the ocean, the physics change dramatically. Because water is an incompressible fluid, it acts like a solid anvil. The explosive overpressure has nowhere to expand but outward through the structure of the vessel itself. The explosive shock wave magnifies exponentially. The structural integrity of the Type B-1 submarine suffers catastrophic, instantaneous failure. The heavy steel ribs of the hull are bent outward and pulverized. The entire 356-foot vessel is violently severed into two jagged, twisted halves. In less than 3 seconds, the pride of the Imperial Japanese Navy ceases to exist. The two severed halves of the I-17 slip beneath the frothing surface of the Pacific, trailing a massive plume of oil, debris, and displaced air bubbles. Not a single Japanese shell strikes the Bankline refinery. The California coast remains completely untouched. High above, the B-2 Spirit banks gently to the west, its digital screens registering the sudden, complete disappearance of the thermal target. The pilots do not cheer. There is no dogfight adrenaline. It is simply a sterilized confirmation of target destruction. The strategic aftermath of this localized, absolute annihilation shifts the trajectory of the American home front during the Second World War. In our historical timeline, the Ellwood attack caused practically zero physical damage to the United States, destroying only a single catwalk and some rigging, but the psychological damage was catastrophic. It proved the mainland was vulnerable. It directly triggered the infamous Battle of Los Angeles the very next night, a mass panic where terrified United States coastal defense units fired over 1,400 heavy anti-aircraft shells into the empty night sky, convinced that a massive Japanese air armada was directly overhead. That panic injured civilians, damaged property, and handed the Japanese Empire a massive propaganda victory. In this simulation, that panic never occurs. February 24th passes in complete silence. The citizens of Santa Barbara and Los Angeles sleep soundly in their beds, unaware of the violence that just unfolded a few miles off their beaches. The United States Navy anti-submarine patrols eventually note an unexplained sonar anomaly and a massive oil slick off the coast of Ellwood the following morning, but they attributed to a navigational error or a catastrophic mechanical failure of an unknown vessel. Across the Pacific, the Imperial Japanese Naval Command waits for a radio transmission from Commander Nishino confirming the bombardment. The transmission never comes. Weeks pass, and the I-17 is officially listed as missing in action, presumed lost to a stray sea mine or a catastrophic dive failure. The Japanese High Command reevaluates the safety of their cruiser submarines operating so close to the American mainland, significantly altering their aggressive coastal patrol doctrine. They will never know the truth. They will never know that for one brief, terrifying microsecond in the dark, cold waters of California, a $2 billion ghost from the 21st century reached out from the stratosphere, peered through the darkness with mathematical precision, and erased their terror weapon from existence.